All right, let's get right into it. Today we're breaking down a really thought-provoking article from luchaclick.com. The argument it makes is pretty stark, that a global system of digital control is being built step by step, using a public justification that's basically impossible to argue against, protecting children. So let's unpack this.
So this really gets to the heart of the article's whole argument. I mean, look, we all want kids to be safe online. That's a given. But the question this piece forces us to ask is, what if the way we're trying to achieve that, the very technology we're building, actually ends up creating a kind of digital prison for everyone? It's a heavy concept, so let's see how the author builds their case.
Okay, here's the roadmap for our breakdown. First, we're going to tackle this child safety Trojan horse idea. Then we'll zoom out to see the digital grid the article describes. From there, we'll see how it all connects to programmable money, and then, importantly, what happens when this kind of complex system fails. And we'll wrap it all up with the final picture the article paints of a permissioned society.
All right, first up, the child safety Trojan horse. The core idea here, according to the article, is that the very real need to protect kids online is being used as the perfect emotionally charged reason to introduce technology that has a much broader purpose.
So you see these laws popping up all over, right? The UK has one, the US has one, and the public pitch sounds great. Keep harmful content away from kids. Who could possibly disagree with that? But the article really focuses on the how. How do you actually enforce that for every single person on every single website? And that's where, according to this analysis, the plan starts to look a little different.
And this quote from the article just nails the technical dilemma. To catch the child, you must card the adult. Think about it. There's really no way to reliably filter out kids without first positively identifying all the adults. It fundamentally changes the internet from an open space to one where you have to show your papers just to get in the door. Now, you'll hear people say, oh, but we can do this in a privacy-friendly way. They talk about age estimation, where your camera maybe does a quick scan and guesses your age. But here's the problem the article highlights. If that guess is wrong, the platform could face massive legal liability. So, to cover themselves, what's the safest option for any company? Not estimation, but hard verification with a government-issued ID.
And here's the real kicker, according to the piece, the technology to solve this privately actually exists. It's called a zero-knowledge proof. It's like having a digital credential that can prove you're over 18 without revealing your name, your birthday, or anything else about you. The article argues that because these truly anonymous solutions are being ignored by lawmakers, maybe the goal isn't just about protecting kids. Maybe it's about making sure every single user on the internet can be identified.
So if step 1 is getting an ID from everyone online, what's step 2? Well, according to the article, it's about plugging that ID into a much larger global framework. It's about building the digital grid.
And that grid is often called Digital Public Infrastructure, or DPI. The article breaks it into 3 layers that are designed to fit together like Lego bricks. At the bottom, you have digital identity. That plugs into a digital payments layer. And sitting on top of it all is a data exchange layer, letting government and corporations share information seamlessly. And how do you link it all? The article points to things like the EU's new digital ID, which includes what's called a unique persistent identifier. You can think of it as a super cookie for your entire life. It's a single number that connects your health records to your financial data to your browsing history. The idea of having separate, walled-off parts of your life, well, that kind of goes away. And it's not just software. The article says the hardware is part of the grid too. This technology, remote attestation, lets a service check if your phone is running approved, unmodified software. The implication is that if you're using a privacy-focused phone or software, you could be blocked from essential services like banking. Your device has to prove it's trustworthy to the system, not just to you.
This chart from the article really just lays it all out. We go from a physical ID that's offline and isolated to a digital one that's constantly connected and creates a real-time log of your life. But that revocability line is the one that really stands out. A physical ID has to be physically taken from you. A digital one can just be switched off, instantly, remotely.
Okay, so you have this huge grid that can identify and track everyone. What do you do with it? According to the article, the next step is to connect it to the money supply. This is where identification and tracking turn into active enforcement.
And this is done through what's called a central bank digital currency, or CBDC. The article makes a really crucial philosophical point here. The cash in your pocket is your possession. You own it.
A CBDC isn't something you possess. It's an entry on a government ledger. It's a permission to spend, a permission that can be granted or revoked.
And since it's just code, that permission can be programmed. The article describes money that can have rules attached, rules about where you can spend it, what you're allowed to buy with it, and even when you have to use it by. You could have stimulus funds that expire in 30 days, or money that simply won't work if you try to buy fuel during a shortage.
Now, if this all sounds like some distant future, the article points to Canada's Freedom Convoy as a real-world example. The government used an emergency order to force banks to freeze the accounts of protesters, and even people who just donated a few dollars, all without a court order. Financial access was turned off like a tap to stop a political protest.
The article also brings up the case of Nigel Farage in the UK. He was debanked. His bank just closed his accounts. And thanks to internal documents he got a hold of, the reason was clear. His political views didn't align with the bank's values. The point being made is that access to the financial system itself could become dependent on having the correct opinions.
So we've talked about what happens when this system works as designed for control. But what happens when a system this massive and complex simply breaks? This next part looks at the very real human cost of glitches, errors, and exclusion.
For this, the article looks at India's Aadhaar system, the largest digital ID program in the world. When the government tied food rations to this biometric ID, any technical failure became a humanitarian crisis. Manual laborers with worn-down fingerprints couldn't get scanned. A server goes down, a database has an error, and suddenly millions of people were cut off from their food supply.
And this makes the risk horrifyingly concrete. The article recounts the story of an 11-year-old girl, Santoshi Kumari, who reportedly starved to death because her family's ration card was canceled over a database issue with their ID. It's a devastating illustration of the article's central warning. In a totally digital system, if the computer says you don't exist, you might as well not.
And that brings us to the final section, where the article ties all of these pieces together to paint a picture of what it calls a permissioned society.
This table is really the whole argument in a nutshell. It takes each piece of the puzzle and contrasts the stated, public-facing purpose with what the article claims is the actual, de facto purpose. Protect children becomes identity collection. Financial inclusion becomes programmable control. Device security becomes hardware lockout. It's a really stark summary. And here it is, the final convergence, the complete, interconnected system the article warns about. It's a world where your digital ID is the key that unlocks your digital wallet. That wallet contains programmable money, and you can only access any of it on a device that the state trusts and can monitor. Every piece locks into the next.
So we're left with this fundamental trade-off. The picture this article paints is a bleak one, where in the pursuit of safety and efficiency, we unintentionally build a system of total control. The author isn't arguing it's some kind of evil plot, but simply a convergence of technologies, each with its own logical justification. And it really leaves us with that one critical question to ponder. Where do we, as a society, draw the line between safety and freedom?